My service learning agency was located at Lafayette High School, located on the west side of Buffalo, New York. 75% of the Lafayette High School students had just left their homes to come to the United States. 20% spoke English, 30% spoke Spanish, 45% spoke a Burmese dialect, and a small percentage spoke another language, as in Nepali, Somali, or Swahili. Lafayette High School is the oldest public school in Buffalo that remains in its original building. It's a stone and brick building that has a French Renaissance Revival style. Lafayette High School was the third high school built in Buffalo, New York. Its first graduating class was in 1903. It has fallen into recent struggles with its academics and has been placed on the New York State's watch list of persistently underperforming schools. After the 2010 to 2011 school year, the school closed and reopened as a multicultural school with a new principal. My sociology class required 20 hours done at a service learning site. 18 of these hours were done at Lafayette High School, and 2 were done at the orientation located at Damon College. At my service learning site at Lafayette High School, I did things like help students study for their tests or their regents, help students with their homework, help students with projects, help students write papers. I even answered a few questions about college or FAFSA, or help students fill out applications for jobs, or things like help them fill out papers to play certain sports at school. It was just a range of things that I helped them with. Being a tutor at Lafayette High School, you had to be a very patient person, because you had to realize that most of these students recently just arrived in America, and English wasn't their first language, so you had to understand that they can't automatically just know what something like mitochondria is, and you can't expect them to know the basics of things that you learned when you were in elementary school. Another thing I realized being a tutor at Lafayette High School was that how hard it must have been for these students to come to a country where they don't know the language, they don't know how to read the language, and they don't know how to write it. So, average American students struggle every day in high school, and they know how to read, and they know how to speak English. So, I just imagine how hard it must be for them to come here and have to adapt so quickly and have to be expected to pass all these finals, all these regents, and all these requirements to get what we've been working on for much. A lot of these students have only been here for maybe 2 to 3 years, and they go into high school and they're expected to learn about mitochondria, about how cells divide, and they barely can even write or speak English. But it just shows how smart they actually are, that they understand it for only being here for 2 years and barely knowing English. And a lot of them understand this and can speak English, but speaking English and writing it down are 2 different things, and I feel that's where their struggles came in most. Although they understood the information, they had a hard time writing it. So this then gave them a hard time during their test. And also, if they were allowed a translator, but how are they supposed to know what mitochondria means in their language if they're taught it in English? I became close to a lot of the female students. We were around the same age. They're mostly students in their junior year of high school or their senior year of high school. And it was just really difficult to, see a lot of these young girls and hear about their stories back home and hear about how college wasn't even an option for them when compared to my life. My parents encouraged me to go to college and always thought that I would do best and go to college, but to see these girls not have that option, it just made me realize that a lot of cultures are different. And although I do come from a culture where it is a patriarchal setting, being Americanized, I realized that I was given options, and these girls, once they graduate high school or they stop going to high school, they have to start a family and things like that. I can't imagine myself doing until I graduate college and I'm settled and financially stable. And for me to hear stories about girls my age having to start families and find husbands, and I can't imagine myself going through that. And I understand that there are many cultural differences between our cultures. My goal throughout this whole service learning was not only to help these students do well on their tests and, learn and help them do well in school overall, and maybe one day urge them to apply to college, but I was hoping to reach out to these girls and to let them know that they do have options and that starting a family wasn't their only option right away, and that college can be an option. And I did this by, talking to the girls about college and all the possibilities they could do and all the things they can major in and all the help they can get if they're scared that they won't do well in college, if they're afraid that they can't afford college. And I told them that all this help is offered and all they have to do is try. The staff and the teachers at Lafayette High School show so much compassion towards these students and show so much care towards these students, and they overall show that they really care for these students, and they would go to the moon and back for these students. It was one of my last days of service learning, and I was talking to a girl from Thailand, and I was helping her study for her Global 2 Regents test. And she is a senior at Lafayette High School. She was telling me how she failed her Global Regents 4 times. And in my mind, I was like, oh, poor girl, how can I help her get through this? What studying tips can I give her? And, just basically trying to encourage her the best way I can. And one of the teachers came by and said, don't you worry about how many times you failed that test. I have had students who failed it 7, 10 times. Don't you worry, you're going to pass it this time. And just hearing that just made me realize that the teachers really cared about their students, and that just made me feel like that there are people out there who care about children's education. And I just thought it was just an amazing thing, and this whole experience has made me feel so humble about myself, and it was just overall humbling. And I got to learn about so many different. Most of these students are refugees, and they're escaping from war and turmoil from their countries, and they've probably lived in refugee camps for years or months or however long. But a lot of them have seen some horrible things and have seen some things that not a lot of average American kids have seen. To compare this to what I've learned in class and what I've learned through the textbook, I've learned a few things as far as like demographics and just things about like different countries these students are from, to kind of get an understanding of what they're coming from and their background information, and to get an understanding on why they're so quiet and why it is difficult for them. In Yemen, 45.2% of the population lives below the poverty line versus 12% of the total United States population. Yemen's recent civil war was in 2004 and has forced about 200,000 Yemenis to flee. Due to cultural differences in the 1990s, 1/7 of the ethnic Nepali population in Bhutan was forced into refugee camps in Nepal. Over 40,000 children have been born in these camps, not knowing what a home is, and for that matter, not knowing real life. There are over 135 distinct ethnic groups in Burma. Among those are Burman, Karen, Chin, and Karani. Each ethnic group speaks its own language. Experience at Lafayette to be a very good one, and I really enjoyed my time there, meeting all the students, meeting all the staff, all the teachers, and just being in that environment made me realize how grateful I should be for where I'm at and how I was raised, and how lucky I should feel that I am where I am now because of my parents, and because education for the most part here is free. And I really enjoyed my time there, that I'm going back there for my 60-hour service learning in the fall. And I really look forward to seeing those kids again. And they get really excited when you come, and they love hearing about stories I have from my experience in college, and they're really curious about it, and it just shows that they're really interested in going. And I'm really glad that Damon does this program, and especially with this school, and I'm glad that they provide tours for the juniors and the seniors of this high school. And I feel like that's really great, that we're encouraging students and kids who don't probably even know what college is, or don't know that they have that option. And I'm glad we're opening this to them, and that we're actually helping them. And it's just an amazing experience, and I can't wait to go back next fall.